Hey everybody, it's me, DH Thorne, on this beautiful Thursday evening in spring. Hopefully everybody is enjoying their spring so far. Let me turn my inspiring music down a little bit. So let's go through as usual and say hello to all the interlopers. First and foremost, we have Raquel Kelly. Raquel Kelly with a $20 donation to the Thorne Fund right off the bat. Before even the stream got started. So let's give Raquel Kelly a big round of applause. Definitely someone who is always supportive and friendly and super supportive and just really sweet about it. And thank you so much, Raquel. I appreciate that so much. It used to be this was my main job. For a little while, I had quit my day job and relied on book sales and ritual services and some other things like a lot of other people do. And after 2020, because of the way certain things happened, um, it just started to not go as well. Some of that was from shadow banning. Some of that was just from my own burnout, of doing it that way. A lot of it is, you get clients that don't understand my personal perspective on magic and sorcery and how it works or what it does. And they would come asking for things that um, were just like, I'm not a vending machine. I'm not a genie in a bottle. And it's like my conscience. I can't sit there and take hundreds and hundreds of dollars from people who are literally expecting me to be like Jesus and work miracles for them. That's not what magic really does. Well, it does. You do get miracles. Don't get me wrong. You get quite amazing things will happen. And it's just if you're having a problem, like a serious issue, um, and you want to spend money, someone like me, um, my perspective is that this, when it manifests, it's synchronistic in nature. And I don't have it in me to be like, hey, look, give me all this money and there's a chance that it'll happen. But then they get in their own way, they don't do the work, or they do, but their intention is running contrary to what I know the divine, their higher self, is trying to do with them. Part of my job as whatever you want to call me isn't to just, give you your wishes or tell you what you want to hear. Part of my job is to guide you. If I am going to be taking on your issue, if I'm going to be taking on your contract, shall we say, um, my job is not to give you what you want, but it's to make sure that magic and spirituality help you get what you need. And it's you that ultimately gets it. My doing a ritual, moving some candles around, saying some special words, those things don't cause things to happen. They open gates of the mind, they open gates of the soul, gates of consciousness through which you as a divine being can go and manifest and witness the reality that conforms to your higher will. And usually what happens is people's mundane mentality gets in the way. They're filled with, oh, this can't work, or, doubts or egoistic attachments, and they don't get anywhere. And, for me, when I do a ritual, that clears a lot of that blockage out. Or when I do a simple spell, like a jar spell or candle spell, that is a way for me to sort of do a colon cleanse of my egoistic blockages, to enter into a deep meditative state, to deeply visualize, to create in my psyche this paradigm in which the thing that I'm trying to have happen can happen. So the misunderstanding is that people think that magic causes things to happen, when magic is more of a sort of performance art that helps you witness something that you were blind to before. And this is just an analogy. It's not precise, because there is, when you're competent at it, there is this appearance of cause and effect. It will look like D.H. Thorne did a ritual and then this thing happened. But that's not what I've ever taught you guys. It's not what I've ever been, talking about. It's not a system of cause and effect. And any tradition that says it is, they're welcome to say that. I completely disagree. I think that's the mark a little bit of a charlatan when they say that. Because if one ever puts them to a real test, and I mean a real test, a test where the situation's really controlled and it has to be magic or it's nothing, I'm willing to bet pretty much anything that if anyone out there can do it, they're not doing it on YouTube for, money, stuff like that. And to those people who really believe that they're doing it and they're being sincere about it, you're not someone that I have a lot of judgment over, because you believe what you're doing and you believe you're being ethical, and I'm cool with that. But this is one of those sticking points that separates me maybe from other people. And I've had flack for it. People said, oh, you're a fraud then because you're talking about magic, but you don't think it does anything. I'm not quite saying that, and I never said that. But what I have said is that lighting a few candles doesn't make reality bend to your will. In fact, reality doesn't bend to your will. There's no reality to bend. There's only you. And this realization, it's a non-dual realization. The idea that you can force reality to give you what you want, that's a dualistic perspective. The higher reality is all is the same divine being witnessing itself from infinite numbers of perspectives. And some of those perspectives are what you are looking for. And so you shift into those realities. You open paradigm gates of the mind, and it looks like a natural sequence of events, or maybe a little bit of miracle here and there, some really far out coincidences, of course. But you're opening pathways for the psyche so that the divine can travel, its consciousness can travel to those things. So it's it may sound a little semantical, but it's a necessary difference of perspective. People who believe that they do a few things and it causes life to change, that is the illusion. It's a dualistic illusion. When you do a magic ritual and change appears, on the other hand, that is a better understanding. It is not causal. It is acausal. There is no causation involved because the divine cannot be caused. The divine is reality. You can't cause it to do what you want because you're it. There's no cause and effect involved here. It's literally just, why do you think you need to visualize it so much? You're literally aiming where to send your soul, if you will. You're aiming where to send consciousness next. It's like if you're thinking about having a cup of water or something because you're thirsty, you usually imagine it first in some capacity. Some people don't visualize very well and they have to do it another way. But there's some sort of internal diagramming that goes on. There's some sort of, prediction that's happening. I predict, I intend. Intention is a prediction. For the divine, an intention is a prediction, and a prediction is an intention. If, put it in like Old Testament kind of sounding way, if God predicts something, that's as good as a definite. It's not a prediction, it's literally a commandment. When if the divine says it will rain tomorrow, that's not a prediction, that's a command. So when you are in this state of divine awareness, you're not causing things to happen. You're not even really predicting, although the difference between a prediction and a command from the divine or non-dual perspective, there's no difference. This is why in Become the Maelstrom, I said we do a ritual almost like a celebration of a thing that's already going to happen. It's more like you predicted it. You can't tell the difference if you do it right. If you do it right, you feel like you predicted it, like you predicted winning the lotto or something. So people will hear what I'm saying and they will immediately go, well, I did this and then this happened, so I know it works. Yes. Just like you might have a perception of, anything happening coincidentally between two actions, like well, let me think. Oh, I thought badly about, somebody and then they died the next day. Did you predict it or did you cause it? Well, neither and both. Okay. Or every time I clap my hands, it rains, but that's more of a coincidence. So the problem that happens here, and where I tend to lose people, is this perception, because most people live in a dualistic, materialistic perspective. They live in a world of cause and effect. And for you, it's going to look that way. And that's my point. It's an appearance of cause and effect, but it's not. There is no such thing from the non-dual perspective. There's no such thing. I know it is said in certain traditions, oh yes, karma, it's action, it's cause, it's effect. Okay. But from the physical perspective, from this material, in this reality, it only looks like cause and effect the way we treat it. It's an appearance. Think of it like a video game. When you're playing, say the latest Legend of Zelda, and you're swinging your sword at monsters and stuff, there's no sword. You're not swinging anything. There's no actual physics at work. It's a simulation. The game is happening in a way on a computer, and it's being projected on a screen in a way that you recognize that looks like real life. And in almost exactly the same way, the non-dual is the non-dual divine, the absolute God, whatever you think it is simulating itself. Right now, through you, it is simulating itself. It's experiencing itself through you as you. This is a manifestation, just like a video game. Except it's not a computer like certain people want it to be. They want to say, oh, this is simulation theory. Yes, but this is non-dual simulation theory. Non-duality came first. And it's way more appropriate and accurate because it doesn't require computers. Okay, it's entirely logical and consistent with our observations and our experiences. It is not a matter of cause and effect. It is a matter of witnessing, of shifting your perspective to where the events are that you are hoping to experience. So when you do a ritual, you're not causing something to happen. You're literally setting yourself up to like quantum leap to that reality. Some people might say, well, what's the difference? The difference is when you're doing this from a dualistic perspective, you're digging your egoistic trap deeper. That's the big difference. And that egoistic trap is what holds you back. The more egoistic you are about it, thinking this is a real world that I have to change. This is a real person that has to change. I have to cause things. I'm just little old me. If you notice, if you do your homework with real magic, all the best traditions cut out all of that. When you look at the Golden Dawn, when you look at the Lesser Banishing Ritual and all this kind of stuff, when you're doing these rituals, you end up becoming the Tetragrammaton. Right? At the end, you're not just invoking it, you're recognizing that's what you are. That's why it works. It's not because you're moving things around. There's no energy fields that you're manipulating. All of that is a dualistic delusion. In order for anything, be it like magic as an energy field or chi or any of this stuff, that requires a dualistic reality. It means that there has to be something in conflict with something else. You can't make things move unless they're in conflict. I cannot, let me grab a random object here that's worth grabbing. I don't know, let me find something. This ring. I can't pick this ring up with my hand unless the reality of this ring is resisting the reality of this hand, and this hand is a superior reality to the ring, and therefore it moves. If the ring was a superior reality in my hand, heavier, more solid, more solidly placed, I couldn't move it. That's the materialistic view. The materialistic view says I have to charge this with magical energy and then point it at something and it'll work. Like you're using physics. You understand? You're using materialistic ideas. You're using ideas of electricity and this kind of stuff. But that's not what magic is. Magic can look that way. If that helps you, if it helps you to visualize it that way, that's fine. I would never tell you not to visualize it that way if that's what works for you. But you've got to recognize that that's all just Maya. All of it. The concept of energy itself is Maya. The concept of soul, of cause and effect, up and down, spirit worlds, demons, gods, all of that is an illusion of Maya. And one of the problems that happens is when people hear that, they immediately start running in the direction of what they think reality must be. Then they want to know, what is reality before that? They think that, well, if this is an illusion, I better get rid of this illusion. No, that's not how this works. Just because it's illusory doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It doesn't mean that you're here by mistake. It doesn't mean you're supposed to get away. You're still thinking dualistically when you do that. You're still thinking that there is a better reality to find. In other words, your ego is trying to assert itself and say, I can witness this better reality if I become enlightened, if I do this, if I do that. Bullshit. You're already enlightened. You're already God incarnate. You just have forgotten. And no amount of me telling you can convince you of the fact. No amount of me pulling apart your delusions bit by bit, strand by strand, delusion by delusion. I can't do it for you. You've got to spend, well, it can happen to you instantaneously without any apparent cause. There is no cause. You don't cause an awakening. Awakenings happen and there's an appearance of rational steps between where you begin and where you wake up. But sometimes that's not even really apparent. There are people who wake up through no apparent reason. There's people who just wake up. They just get it. Like I've told many times my own story, what Alan Watts was saying didn't wake me up. It was just that he said one thing that my brain ran away with and I disobjectified everything. I took that statement and I made a realization of my own, and then that had like a cascade collapse of all of my resistance to the idea. And I surrendered. And when I did, whoop, I had an experience for the ages. And it led me into practicing magic again. I wanted to know, okay, well then what's magic? How does this work? What is it doing? And at first I began like most of you guys. I thought, well, maybe it's energy fields, the divine works in mysterious ways. Fair enough. That works up to a point, but it's still in a delusional, dualistic frame. Doesn't mean it won't work. Just like your belief in electricity and things makes computers work. Okay, if it wasn't for our identification of those phenomenon and arranging them in such a way that makes computers, we wouldn't have that. So up to a point, you can think of it however you want, even if you don't realize the non-dual truth. But if that's as far as you ever go, then you're stuck in Siddhi. You're stuck in the cities. You're not, when I say cities, I don't mean like cities with buildings. I mean Sidhe. You're stuck in the realm of Siddhi, in the realm of superpowers, but you're not attaining that which makes those toys. Because when you recognize your non-dual nature, you can still do magic as much as you want. There's nothing in non-duality, at least not the tradition that I would talk about, that would say, how dare you try magic? The problem with magic is if it's done incorrectly, it just digs that ditch of dualistic ego deeper and deeper and deeper. You'll start to believe that you are God, not you, not the conscious you, not the divine you, the embodied, ignorant, arrogant, individualized, isolated, separate ego self is God. That's the demiurge. It takes credit. It says, I did that. Meanwhile, it's a puppet at best. So my teachings, my work, and a lot of what I'm saying to you in this video is part of the newest book, just so you know. I better not say too much more. I'll blow my load. This is the essence of magic, the way I have learned to apply it, master it, and I'm getting close to the point where I can start writing, not writing, I'm already writing it, releasing this so that you'll understand. Hopefully you'll understand. But the sticking point for most people is going to be your non-duality, your understanding of non-duality. And this is why, like, you know, it pains me because whenever I write one of these books, if you notice in Become the Maelstrom, what's the first thing I wrote about besides the intro? Non-duality. And I streamlined it. I made it into like a poetic metaphor, right? At the time, that was my favorite poetic metaphor for the non-dual divine, a big storm. And you are just a, you know, you think you're this isolated cloud that's separate from the storm, but you are the storm because the invisible winds are part of that storm and you're all this big whipping going on. And I loved that metaphor or simile or analogy, whatever. I loved it. But as I write these books, I'm realizing, man, I really have to go in hard with the non-dual teachings to the point where the whole book or the whole thing is threatened to become another guy's non-dual book. So I'm sort of venting a frustration here about my own writing. It's one of the reasons why I've been struggling, because I'm trying to write all of this in a way that doesn't require me to basically re-examine or reintroduce the entirety of non-duality, argument by argument, proof by proof, reason by reason, and then lead you into a meditative realization, and then we can play with magic. Because that's not necessarily true either. Magic can be your method of awakening. What do you think? So there's magic and there's sorcery. This is how I divide things. Magic is, generally speaking, it's ritualistic or it's meditative, but ultimately the point of magic is to transcend and achieve godhood, recognize your divinity. Sorcery is what you do with that. Sorcery are the things that allow you to tweak reality a little bit. And when I say tweak reality, I don't mean you're changing reality. I mean, like, it's like changing the dial on your radio to better tune in the reality you're trying to witness as the divine. It's there waiting for you. You just have to tune into it. It's a little bit like the law of attraction, except the law of attraction is like this weird new agey thing that's like, it's not really grounded in much that's metaphysically grounded. It's I'm not saying it's completely nonsense, because I mean, the book has been successful, those books, those concepts. But the point is that wishful thinking isn't enough. Positive thinking isn't enough. You know, law of attraction is not enough. It's a way, but if you think that the method causes it, you're already failing. It has nothing to do with your method. You're doing it right now. Every moment of your experience of life is the divine exploring itself, manifesting an illusion of time and space. And you don't have to stay on the same track. That track can jump. You can jump between realities. You can jump between causal patterns. You can jump between paradigms. You can jump so far afield that you'll think it was a nightmare and come snapping right back and think that you are just dreaming it. Happened to me many times. And you'll be glad that it was just a dream, but it was actually a reality out there in, when I say out there, I really mean in here. It is a reality in the infinite divine non-dual, boundless, dimensionless multiverse. It's there. Your worst nightmare and your greatest dream. So how do you get there? Well, there's nothing stopping you except yourself. That's the point. Magic is a way to take the needle off the record, to stop trying to change things, to do something that's fun and engrossing, and pour your mental, aiming at it, and then you put the needle back down, and then the music starts playing that you're looking for. So in a moment, we're going to continue. I've actually got a couple interesting talking points tonight. That was just sort of a lead in, because you really do have to understand non-duality to understand where I'm going. But let me say hi to everybody. So we already said hi to Raquel Kelly. She's so sweet. Jockster was here. What's up, Jockster? Jockster was saying nice things. Atropa's here. One of my favorites, Atropa. Joffrey's here, another favorite. Hardcore Zombie, another favorite. Wyatt, oh my God. He says, enlighten me. Well, all you got to do is just not eat for a couple weeks and you'll get enlightened a little bit. Kelly Meadows says, good evening. It's the usual around here. Let's see. Jay Balalel. I always do that. I'm going to never get that right. It's the umlauts or whatever, those little shapes over your name. Hail and good evening all. Let's see. Jennifer Vatsa, the Nerd Queen Deluxe. What is up, Nerd Queen? I will be the Nerd King and you could be the Nerd Queen. We're all nerds here, right? Like, it's sort of like Pennywise. We all float down here. We're all nerds down here. Christian Heinekainian. I know I'm saying it wrong. Heinekainian. He says, time for another episode. Yes. Yes, indeed. Let's see. Solor S says, hello, everyone. Let me scroll down. Mystic, I don't know how magic works. Before I know all the things I can dream about, some future, even small event, I try practicing magic and have those dreams. I never have those kinds of few structured dreams anymore. You might, dreaming is interesting. I've actually read that when people, this doesn't mean you're becoming enlightened or anything, but I've read, and it seems somewhat true for me, that people who have attained or are attaining or reaching that point that we colloquially call enlightenment, that their dreams actually stop or they subside quite a bit. You don't dream as much. And sometimes I think that's just, when I had sleep apnea, but then I lost 100 pounds and I still don't dream as much as I used to. When I was a kid, I dreamt vivid as hell all day long, dreamt a lot of stuff. And as I got older, my dreams just kind of faded away and I just sort of became consciously unconscious, if that makes sense. I was aware that I was sleeping, if you will. Like, it's not just because I woke up and I go, I must have been sleeping. There's like an awareness that I was sleeping. Like, I know time, I know, not, I don't know time's passing, but I'm conscious of existing, even though I'm not aware of anything happening. And I think that's what they're talking about. It's like you do lose dreams, but you end up returning to source in your sleep instead. Like, you don't go sightseeing the multiverse. You just kind of relax and be at peace because there's no reason to see it all. You're cool with it. So maybe. Christian says, forget quantum computing, try non-dual computing. Yeah, basically. Alpha's here. What's up, Alpha? Alpha says hello. And Atropa says, I do believe it's about moving energy. I hope I didn't just like trample all over poor Atropa. Atropa's cool. I don't want to be like, oh, you're wrong. I didn't read that. I would have couched it a little bit differently because I kept going on about energy. It's like I saw it, but I didn't. Sorry, Atropa. I disagree slightly. Tess Marie says, hi, DH. What's up, Tess? It's been a minute, although you're here almost every week. I don't keep track too well. Like, sometimes it all blurs together. Like, I'm like, I think I've seen this person last week. Xander Promeo says, just dropping in to say, hey, I'm in class with the with Benatti right now, and I don't want to cheat on my face class. I get our favorite class. Yeah, fave class. That's cool. Carson, contradictions are not always bad. In fact, they are usually a necessary ingredient for triggering intellectual creativity. This is why I often say, when you're hitting a paradox, you're getting close. If you're really investigating metaphysical philosophy and you're reaching a paradox, guess what? You're probably touching the truth, because the absolute truth is paradoxical in the extreme when compared to our materialistic experience. The experience of material reality, science is putting down this whole, this is real, that's going away. It's already going away, but it's going to be gone soon. Give it another decade or so, maybe a generation. Basically, we need a whole bunch of old guard scientists, physicists, who have a huge ego. We need them to just drop off like we always do, just like what happened with Einstein. When Einstein came along, nobody wanted to believe him because you had the old guard scientists saying, no, he's a crackpot, no, he's wrong. Even when he proved his theories, even when his theories were proven a few times, they still took a shit on him. And it wasn't until people started dying off, quite literally, or retiring, that suddenly he gets started to be taken more seriously, and then becomes like the biggest thing since ever. And the same thing's going to happen with science today, assuming all this New World Order crap gets dealt with, and science is allowed to be sincere and honest again. Assuming that happens, I do predict that probably within Wyatt's lifetime, if not mine, there will be enough of a shift in science where they may not embrace non-dualism or anything, but they're going to be embracing a non-physical model of reality. Once that happens, it's going to be just like Tesla said. Once science starts probing the inner world, or whatever he said, it's going to make more advances than it ever has. And he was completely right. And he was talking not just about mentation or even spiritual. He used to go, I forget who it was he went, but he went and he actually took part and witnessed a whole bunch of lectures by some very, at the time, prominent Indian yogis, non-dual teachers. And he was, obviously, he didn't have a problem with it. He agreed with it on some level, although he never really said it. He went to them he seemed to get something out of them. We'll just leave it at that. So I forget where I learned that, but you can look it up. Like, did Tesla go to, I forget, like Hindu teachers or something? Like somehow Google's probably going to like not show you because Google sucks. You may have to use some other search engine, but I forget where I learned it. Tess Marie moved to LA. You mean LA like California, LA? Oh, I don't know if I'm sorry. Oof. LA sounds like if it was like the 80s or 90s, I would have thrived and loved it. And nowadays, it's just like I'd probably run out of there screaming. Oh, Wyatt, you gotta put down some of that. And I mean this in no way that is insulting at all. You got to put some of that ego down, some of that arrogance down. I understand your lament because there are times I share it with you. There's times when I'm feeling low and I'm not in my non-dual mind. I'm literally I'm deep in my own ego. And I look at the state of things. I look at what has changed about society. Remember, I'm Gen X. So I'm sitting right between the two extremes. I'm sitting between the boomers and the millennials and Gen Z. And you can say what you want about the boomers. Most of the negatives are true, but you got to give it to the boomers. They were better educated. They had, and they may not seem like it because they may not know the things that millennials and Gen Z think they know, but they knew how to think better, if that makes sense. They had a better ability to think critically. Not all of them, not as a generalization. They were educated to have critical thinking better than most people today do. Most people today are indoctrinated on a nonstop barrage of base, vapid bullshit, twerking, music. I know I sound like an old fart right now because when I was a kid, all the older people were saying the same thing about my generation. But it's true. It's literally gotten worse and worse and worse. That's why everybody's saying it. Once you start sounding like your grandpa about this shit, if you think about it, they saw the same thing happening to you that you're seeing happening to the younger generation now. And you're going, how the fuck are these poor souls going to make it? They're not being taught how to think. They're just being taught what to think. How the hell? And to be fair, that's always the case. It is not in society's interest. People have said, why do we not teach people how to think? Why do we teach them what to think? It is never in society's best interest or the powers that be's best interest for people to know how to think. Sophistry and ditto head kind of memorization by rote, that is how society educates, because that way it can control you. Societies don't like teaching people how to think, because then they might question the order of civilization. So if you've got even a modicum of critical thinking ability, self-awareness, if you've got even a modicum of it, then this world is very painful. The more aware you are, the more critically minded you are, the more you're able to reason for yourself, right or wrong. You doesn't mean you're right about everything. That's one of the necessary critical thinking skills, is to go, this is what I think, but it could be wrong. I know I talk with a lot of authority, but that's usually because I've spent a lot of time questioning and challenging what I think, and it holds up enough that I can say it. Not always. When I think I might possibly could be wrong, I tell you. I go, well, this is what I think, but I don't know. And sometimes I really think and I feel confirmed, and then I'm wrong too. But the point is, most people don't do that at all. Or they're taught to just be so humble they don't allow an original thought in their head at all. This is another facet of control. Look around you, especially more recent generations. Everybody is always self-deprecating. They don't like to take initiative. They don't like to say, I think this and I'm right or wrong. Everyone's supposed to have a doctorate degree before you're allowed to have an intelligent thought. Like, oh, I'm not really that smart. They want you dumbed down. They want you to think you're stupid. And they want you to hesitate. They want you to not question. They want you to just be like, well, I'm stupid, so I'm just going to do what everybody says. That's what they want. They don't want you to question. They don't want you to have any respect for your own intelligence. They want you to have a respect for their intelligence. They want to control you. And this is why, if you ever get into debates with people online over any of these issues, half of them are going to be like, well, I have a degree in science, in physics, and I know non-dualism is wrong because I have a degree. You get where I'm going? And so the independent thinker has a real problem. It's really painful to have an independent mind, because you know how much bullshit's out there. And you know that some of the things you think might be bullshit too, but you don't know they're bullshit because you might not have seen the truth. You might think you did, but you know that that's a possibility because you know how much they're lying all the time. We grew up as Gen X thinking that most things were what they appeared to be on some level. Yeah, we were aware, like Jen will concur with this, we were aware of the bullshit, but we thought we had at least a better view, but we didn't. The only difference between us, like people like me, is that I'm like, everything's bullshit. It's all lies. And only from that perspective can you start to climb the ladder to truth. You have to first recognize the delusion. Well, guess what? That's how non-duality works too. The first step to a non-dual awakening is questioning this. It's questioning all of this. Everything you experience, both this and this. It's questioning the entire appearance, because appearances are deceiving. So it's no surprise that true non-dualists, the ones who truly transcend, they're not cheap. They're not about, love and light, following some leader and going, oh, holy light God. They don't do that. They have questions. They have challenges. They have doubts and skepticism of everything on some level. And a lot of times that begins with an ouchie, that it begins with pain. It requires suffering so that you want to turn away from the lie, because the lie hurts, especially when it's revealed. Suffering is a really, really big ingredient to the non-dual awakening. It's not necessary, but it's a big ingredient, especially in this world we live in. If everybody was raised from birth with a non-dual language, a non-dual education, different story. You wouldn't need that pain. You'd already be taught to look at this and go, this is bullshit. Imagine a world where everybody knew they were God. They knew that this was just an illusory simulacrum of reality that just vaguely represents it, like a heads-up display on a plane or something, or a VR display. If everybody realized this was more like virtual reality than it is actual reality, and they realized that everybody is the same divine being having an individual experience of itself through this paradigm, everybody would be different. We wouldn't be shitting on each other. We wouldn't be stealing. Well, we might steal. We might do certain things, but it would be different. Just trust me. The same way I've changed because I awakened to it, everybody would change. I wasn't always like a stand-up guy. I'm not saying I was a dirtbag, but especially when I was a kid, I didn't have much moral scrupulousness. I didn't give a shit. I had limits, but those limits they weren't limits because they were hard limits. There was no basis for them. It was just because society said so. And I only picked and choose which ones to agree with. But as I achieved a more non-dual realization, genuine, sincere compassion began to replace the moralistic rules that I was just pretending to follow. And I began to say, it's not about what the rules say. It's about, that's me just in another form. And how would I want to be treated if I was that? Sometimes you got to do things that are painful. Sometimes you got to put the rabid dog down. But the point is, most people aren't rabid dogs. Most of the time, at most, what you have to do is just isolate from them and you're good most of the time. So Jockster makes me crack up. I just read that comment, Jockster. You made me lose my train of thought, bro, although I think I was done with it anyway. He says, watching T.H. Thorne while on the toilet. Damn, life is good. What are you doing down there, Jockster? Careful down there. Don't do anything I would do. All right. It's getting warm in here. It must be my talking. Yes, Mystic, they punish the critical thinker. They only favor yes men, even in school. Absolutely. Yeah, hardcore zombie to a degree I was, although I wasn't so emo until I hit my late teens. In my early teens, I was more grungy than anything. You know, I was wearing the flannels and shit. I guess it was, I was like 18 or 19. I was wearing trench coats already, but I started to really dive into the more dark look. And by the time I was 21, I didn't wear colors ever again. Like, I was over. I think, except for like the nursery where I work, I'll wear colors there because black in the sun don't work. Anybody who wears black in the sun all day knows you don't wear black when you work outside. You're just asking for it. So no, I wear light colors at work, but. Oh no, Raquel, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with flannels. I'm just saying not for me. I don't even like wearing two different colors on my body. Like, I don't like splitting my body in half with color. You know, I guess if I had either longer legs or shorter legs, maybe, but I feel like if I split myself by colors, first of all, I'm fat, even though I've lost a lot of weight, I'm still overweight. And so when I wear two different colors, it makes it more obvious where the fat is. So if I'm like one solid color, I just look more streamlined and it just looks better to me. What I do like to do though, is I'll wear all black as an underlayer and then I might wear color over it. So like I'll wear a colored jacket, I'll wear accent colors, I'll wear a vest that's a different color or something, sure. But I'm not gonna my base layer is always going to be all black unless I'm going to be in the sun all day. So as I got older, I just leaned more into that. And it was my sort of way of saying to hell with it. Hardcore's always says black and sunlight, humans frying. Yeah, like my clothes become a human frying pan. Yes, Wyatt, I sort of did read it. I'm not sure what to make of it. I say just keep developing that and see where it takes you. Just make sure you don't fall into the trap of not questioning it. You should take it at face value when it's happening, and you should write it all down. You should explore it at face value, but understand that your own psyche is going to insert bullshit, and so you've got to work through it. You got to develop it. You know, a lot of the ideas that I had when I was your age were good, but they were symbolic. They were presented to me in the form of like anime movies, basically, and I had to as I got older discard the symbolism and seek what they were referring to, and then it started to make better sense. You know, when I was a kid, I was having visions of you know, dimensional portals opening up and demons pouring out and all this kind of shit. And really, all of those symbolize something. They shouldn't be taken literally. So beware of taking your own stuff too literally. Yeah, Trope, I used to love that. The flannels tied around the waist. That was actually my jam till about, like I said, 17, 18, 19. Until then, I was wearing it just like that. Yeah. Kim says, hi, Thorne. Happy to hear you live. Just found you last week or so. Well, welcome. Welcome aboard. Hopefully I don't offend you with my crazy off-the-wall ideas or my politics. But, you know, that's just how it is. We try not to be offended by ideas around here. We do get maybe a little aggressive against fundamentalism, regardless of where it comes from, whether it's left, right, up, down, Christian, non-duality. You know, you can be a fundamentalist with that too, and that can be a pitfall. So anime movies are the vehicle, exactly, hard. So it's not wrong to see it that way. It's just recognize that's what it is. It's a metaphor. It's a vehicle for the deeper truth. And so you've got to take whatever your vision is, if it's in the form of anime or video games or Star Wars or whatever your mental language is for this stuff, learn to transcend the symbolism, because that's all it is. It's all Maya, just like this is. When you recognize it's all Maya, the rest becomes easy. When you realize that there's nothing real, well, I shouldn't say that because it is real. It's just the appearance is not real. When you realize that it's just an appearance of something real, and that appearance is not real, then once you realize that, the world changes dramatically. So, for example, most people, when walking around, think that they're looking out of their body into a world. They think there's a world out there and a me here, and I'm looking at it from within me out. It's an inside-out perspective. But the reality is something so alien and inverted and unintuitive to that most of you will not believe it, even though science is saying it too. The reality is you don't see reality at all. You see what your brain's doing with reality. You're seeing your brains, and this is coming from just the materialistic perspective. I'm not even talking the non-dual one right now. I'm just talking from a materialistic perspective that says you're a body with a brain and consciousness is produced by that. Even if that's the case, let's say non-duality is wrong and materialists are right, and there is no universal consciousness, there's just what your brain's doing. Okay, let's pretend that's true for just a minute. That still means that this world around you is what your brain is imagining it looks like. It doesn't look like this. It doesn't look anything like this. You're seeing the most flimsy two-dimensional holographic overlay you can imagine. You can't, if you penetrate the surface, it quickly fills it in with more two-dimensional holograms so that you can't ever see what it's made of. You can't ever see what's behind that superficial thing because there's nothing to see. You're seeing something you think is out there, but there is no out there for any of us. The world you think is out there is always in you. It's not out there, it's not above you, it's not below you, it's not in front of you, it's not behind you. You are seeing a perspective of yourself. No matter whether it's the materialist or the non-dualist explanation, it's the same answer. You do not see reality as it is, you see yourself. Period. Even from a materialistic point of view. Do you get it? Even from materialism, what I'm saying is true. If you're really going to reduce it down to its truth, what materialism tells you is you don't see the world, you see the activity of your brain as the world. Either way, you don't see the world. You never have, because the world doesn't look like anything. You're seeing light radiation that has bounced off of things, entered the little irises of your eyes, hit the nerves, went into the back of your skull where the visual cortex processes it. Then it shunts it to another part, to the frontal cerebral cortex, where somehow it turns into the qualia of sight. And there's no part of the brain that is conscious, apparently. We don't know how. So materialism's bullshit. But even if we're going by that model, you don't see reality, you never have. The best analogy for what your experience of reality is like, it's not even like a fucking, VR video game. Imagine that you are at the end. Imagine there's a blind person with a 10-foot pole poking an elephant. And you're some guy with your own 10-foot pole poking the blind guy, and you're trying to figure out what the blind guy's seeing at the end of his pole with his pole. That's closer to what your experience of reality is really like. You're so far removed from the actual essence of reality. You're so far removed from that to even pretend that you have a grasp on it is the pinnacle of hubris and idiocy. And this is just with my materialist cap on. I'm not even wearing the non-dual. This is the cap I wore for 15 years until I got back into magic and spirituality. When I was a hard skeptic after being a magician, Christian, all that, I became a hard skeptic for like 10, 15 years. So I know very well what science says experience is. I know very well the materialist, the physicalist explanation of reality, and I know it's bullshit. That doesn't mean that it's all wrong. It just means that it's bullshit. So it's true in the sense that that's what it appears to be doing. So when we're comparing appearances, the relationship between appearances that science makes is valid. This is why I said you get computers, right? But the actual reality doesn't look like that. You need to look at like Kant, right? What's his first name? I can't think of his name. K-A-N-T. He came up with this idea of noumenal reality. If you really look at philosophers, you'll find that they all seem to they start to sound alike, just in different, they just say it differently. Kant sounds a little bit like a non-dualist. He's not a non-dualist, but he sounds a little bit like a non-dualist. So does Plato, so is Plotinus. They all have similar, because they're touching, like their fingers in the air, and they're feeling the wind, and they're all agreeing it's coming from that direction. They've all got a bead on it. They just can't quite put it into words, and some of them get better at it than others. So we've gotten to the point where metaphysics is I wouldn't call it settled, but it's pretty settled in terms of monism versus dualism, or duality versus non-duality. It's pretty settled that it can't be true dualism. It's got to be something that looks like duality but is not. Right? It's got to be like a tie-dye shirt, right? Or a rainbow that's all light, but the way it vibrates makes it look like colors. This is why rainbows and light are a perfect metaphor, but they're not the reality. Like, this is where people get into problems, because their education into the mystical reality requires metaphors like light and all of this stuff. But they get stuck on the metaphor and they don't leave it. So they think reality is light, but light is a metaphor for what it is. It's not what it is. It's a metaphor for what it is. Light is invisible till it hits something and comes back to your eye, right? There's light flying around this room that I don't see until it hits something. Then the atom that it, so let me be really nerdy for a minute. Light is emitted. It's not a substance that's emitted. It's more like a wave that's like a sound wave. It's closer to that, but it's got wave particle duality. I can explain that in another conversation. So it emits a photon of light, which is really just a measured quantity of light energy, of electromagnetic energy. We call it a photon. That gets emitted and it propagates. It doesn't move. It doesn't travel. This is where people get it wrong. Light doesn't travel anywhere, especially from its own perspective. Light doesn't experience time. So when light is emitted and when it's absorbed by something else, there's no time for the light in between. The light particle doesn't have an experience of time, so it doesn't move. Light doesn't go anywhere. Only from our frame of reference does it appear to travel, but it's not traveling. Just like the ocean isn't moving when a wave is propagating. When a wave propagates across the surface of the ocean doesn't move. In fact, if I spawn a wave over here by splashing in the water, none of that water where I splashed is going to end up on the shore. It just looks that way because of the way the ripple propagates. It's actually a circular movement of the water. The water molecules are doing this kind of motion, and they're doing it in such a way that it makes it appear to be a wave because they move like this and then they inspire the ones next to it, and it's like a tumbling circle, but it's not the same water. You can't make, if I push with all of my might, I can't make the water flow from me to the shore. It'll move a little bit and then it'll disperse and it's good. But a wave will appear to travel from me to the distant shore, depending on how far it is. But so far, it just looks like it flattens out. So light gets emitted. It propagates through space, through the electromagnetic field. It propagates through space. It encounters an atom, which is orbited. And we say orbited, that's a bad analogy because they don't really orbit, but it encounters an atom around which there is an electron field, an electron shell. And there's different resonance frequencies for it. And when it encounters this atom, it encounters this electromagnetic field and it excites one of the electrons. And one of those electrons gets bumped up to a higher energy state, meaning it gets pushed out into a different energy state. Although in this case, I think it gets, because the stronger it is, the closer it can be. But anyway, it gets changed in its energy state. And then it will drop back down to the energy state that it's resonant with, because every atom has a certain amount of charge, positive charge, based on the protons. So when those electrons are excited, they become more energetic and they're no longer balanced with the protons. So what ends up happening is it's got to emit a particle of light in order for the electron to fall back down to its proper energy state. So when it does that, it emits a photon. So the light that is streaming from that light and is hitting, we'll say, this object here, and when I look at it, it's not even the same. Of course, it's not light that's leaving there, but let's pretend it is. It's not even the same light photon coming back to my eye. It's a completely new one. It absorbs and re-emits that, and that's what I get into my eye. So I'm not seeing this piece of garnet ever in my life. You've never seen your own fucking hand. You've only seen the light that it doesn't want. You've only seen the light energy that it doesn't want, that it can't handle, and it's shoving that back at you, and you're calling that your hand? That's not your fucking hand. That's not even what your hand looks like. It's not even what your hand looks like. It's what photons look like after they interact with your hand. And guess what? That's not even what photons look like. We're skipping a whole step of the neurology between your eyeball, your brain, and consciousness. Again, purely materialistic perspective. How dare any of you think you see the world as it is, scientists or otherwise? Everything you think you know about reality is an a priori assumption at best. At best. Doesn't mean it doesn't work. Just like when you're playing a video game. When you're playing a video game and you go, I've got this sword. I know that I can kill that monster with this sword. That's true. But there's no sword. There's no monster. It's just bits of data in your computer. There's no hand, there's no garnet, there's just what my brain models. It creates a simulacrum of reality, and that's what I'm witnessing. There is no garnet there. Garnet doesn't exist. There's no such thing. Again, purely materialistic. How can anybody, if you claim to be a magician, how do you change reality when you can't even see it? See what I'm getting at? You see why I get so animated and so hostile to the idea that magic causes change? You don't cause change when you pick up this bottle. Wyatt, it's very easy. Close your eyes, shut the fuck up, don't think anymore, and witness yourself as you are. You'll witness consciousness as it is. Bang, that's reality. You got it. It's over. That's all there is. There's just consciousness appearing like this to itself. That's what you are. That's what I am. All of this is consciousness witnessing itself. Manifesting an illusion of separation. Now, there can be individuality, because individuality isn't actually predicated by separation. The divine is an individual, okay? It's not a one, but it is an individual. There's only one divinity, right? Individuality is perfectly fine in non-duality because your personal individuality is a reflection of the divine individuality. You're a microcosm. As above, so below. The Hermeticist is correct. Original Hermeticism is basically non-dualism for Egyptians. It's just a little different. They say it differently, but in their cultural metaphors, it's fundamentally a monistic or non-dual. It's just not as sophisticated, perhaps, as Shankara or Plotinus, but it's fundamentally the same concept. You can see how it's fundamentally the same. It's just a different expression of the same idea, a different way of saying it, a different language, a different set of metaphors. And it worked very well for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So, anything that you witness is not reality. When Wyatt's asking, is there any way to truly know what anything really is in a perceptive or rational sense? That's a question with a false premise. You're still thinking dualistically. Wyatt, you need to shut your brain off. You need to go meditate. You need to go listen to true non-dual experts. I'm a good one, but I think I excite your brain too much. You need to go listen to somebody like Alan Watts, Rupert Spira, maybe Bernardo Kastrup, not so much because he's more about the physics and science of it. But Rupert Spira is good for this modern era. Eckhart Tolle is good. As I said, Alan Watts, Rupert Spira, those are my go-tos, those guys. Especially Rupert Spira. He puts it in such direct terms. I don't think he's got everything correct. I don't think that he's perfect. But I would love to just hang out with the guy and just compare notes. He's such a great person to listen. He's a little boring, though. I think a lot of people listen to him and fall asleep. I know I have a few times. But he's got a great way of articulating things. In fact, that's one of the common features of a non-dual teacher. Obviously, they have to be good at articulating to be a teacher, but non-duality is a really difficult thing. Non-duality is like quantum physics of metaphysics. It's actually simple as fuck, but to express it in a way others can understand requires the ability to use metaphor, nuance, simile, allegory, analogy. You've got to find ways to tell people what a color looks like without ever seeing it. Imagine trying to tell somebody what the color blue looks like if they've never seen it. That's the non-dualist job, is to try to get you to turn your eyes from looking out there to look inside you and see yourself. Damn, that's hard to do. This is why you can't just write a book about it or put it as a logical ontology that people can recognize. I can lay out logically what's going on, but that won't tell you what it is. You're just going to adopt this new thing as a new mathematical equation. That's reality, see? Non-duality, that's the equation. Bang. No, that's not it. That's just one way of saying it. You can have complete and utter awareness of your true non-dual self, of your true reality, so easily. But you don't, because you're too wrapped up in your egoistic mind, your chattering, your left brain analogies and analyses and blah, 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 blah. You need to turn off the blah, blah, blahs, and you need to sit. If you can, get yourself into a freaking isolation chamber, a sensory deprivation tank. Go float in one of those fuckers for an hour in absolute stillness and learn to quiet your mind while you're doing it. If you can sit in a sensory deprivation tank for an hour without a single, well, you might get a few stray thoughts, but you know what I'm saying. If you can sit in that tank with minimal thoughts, with just total silence, you will, at that moment, you know God. Because I've never done it, but I don't have to, because I've done the equivalent in meditation. Everything goes away. You know, I usually meditate in a chair, or I might be lying down, or I might be walking. Especially when I'm in a really inactive thing, my body goes away. There's nothing but consciousness in nothingness. The void, I go to the void, that's where I'm at. And it's not a place, it's just a state. It's a state of consciousness. I enter that void state. There is no body. It's like I'm sleeping, but I'm not. The body goes away, everything goes away. That's it. That's reality. Everything else is an appearance of that reality. So nothing is what it looks like at all. Wyatt asks a potentially interesting question. It says, here's a good one. Why is it easier to hit realization through philosophical negation and reductionism than addition and holism? Are we closer consciously to nothing than everything? One of the big problems that exists is people, you're doing it right now. You are taking the words literally. You're taking the words literally. When I say there's nothing or everything, those don't mean anything. I'm pointing with words. When I say nothing, put a space between no and thing. There's no thing. There's not literal nothing. There's no thing. Put a space between every and thing. No thing and everything are the same thing. The thing is, there are no things. Nothing is everything. Everything is nothing. No thing is everything. Everything is no thing. This is why you need to use negation. If I tell you everything is nothing, you start thinking everything is nothingness. In other words, without a space between the words, you start thinking that I'm telling you that everything is empty space or something. You still think there's space. There's no space either. Space is an idea in your mind. Space is a relationship perspective, like the difference between 1 and 2. That's the difference between this and that. But there's no actual emptiness between them. There's no real distance between them. There is only distinction in the sense that one wave can be distinct from another wave, but they all contain the same ocean, and the ocean contains all waves. So if one wave contains the entire ocean, think about this. Really, this is a logical argument that's used in non-dual traditions. The whole metaphor of you are not the wave, you are the ocean. Be the ocean, not the wave. You've heard the thing, an ocean and a drop and a drop in an ocean. This is the same idea. When you see a wave, there is no wave. There's only the ocean taking the shape of a wave in that moment. So in that wave is the whole ocean. And in every ocean, there are waves. That's what this whole thing is. Think of it like an ocean as a metaphor, and your brain will just click. You'll go, huh? So that means this ring is a wave in the ocean, and my body is a wave in an ocean. And whether I put them on my finger or not, even if I throw this all the way to the other end of the universe, if I take this ring and toss it to the other end of the universe, it's still the same ocean that I am. There's no separation between me and the ring. There's only a cognitive differentiation between the ring and me. But that's not reality. That's just what it looks like. The reason that one works better than the other is because, so Wyatt keeps asking, he still doesn't get it. Can you make a box that can contain itself, Wyatt? How would you make a box that contains itself? How would you do that? You can't. Can you make words that contain meaning? You can't. Words are boxes for meaning. They don't mean anything by themselves. Ideas are boxes of meaning. They are not meaning itself. You cannot make an idea box big enough to contain the whole. Because there will always need to be a box a little bit bigger to hold that box. There is no idea that can contain the truth. So what do you have to do to see the truth? You have to get rid of the boxes. You have to negate all of this bullshit that you think is real. And once that's gone, then you can see reality. So sure, you can try to create a box that's infinitely big enough to contain itself. But the only time you're going to get it is when you stop making the boxes. If you think you can make a box big enough to contain reality, at some point you're going to have to give up. And in the giving up, you'll get it. So why do all that when you can just negate all of that effort in the first place and not try to make the box because it's obvious you can't do it? If you can, here's another analogy. And I borrowed this, I'm doing my own version of it. I borrowed this version from Theoria Apophasis, who probably borrowed it from somebody else. But my version, I'm going to make a little different. He talks about a haystack with a golden needle. I'm going to go with, imagine a diamond, a perfectly cut, beautiful diamond, clear as can be, that someone dropped into a body of clear water and then froze that water. How would you get that diamond back? Would you just sit there and pour more water on the ice to try to get the diamond out? No, you would have to first melt the water so the ice becomes water. Then you'd have to heat it up so that it slowly, at a reasonable pace, heats up, evaporates away, and then all that's left at the bottom is that diamond. That's negation. If you're seeking that diamond, you can't get it by adding more water. The analogy is the same with non-dual enlightenment. Psychedelics are excellent at moving the boxes. However, I want to say something here that isn't often said, or maybe it is, but it's not, I don't hear it said enough. Psychedelics alone are not doing anything for you. It requires an initiatory understanding first. If you just are told by somebody, take these psychedelics and you'll get it, some people can get a little teeny grasp of it that way. Yes, that's definitely a step in the right direction. But for psychedelics to really, and I mean anything, I don't just mean psychedelics, I mean chemonosis, which I'm a fan of, within moderation, of course. Don't overdo anything. Don't become a user and an abuser and all that. You know, like Terrence McKenna used to say, if he had, 3 DMT trips in a year, he thought he was overdoing it. Some people do it every day. Are they more enlightened than the Buddha? No, of course not. All it does is it removes some of the labeling that you're doing. Depending upon what you do, because I know that there's all different types. Some of them are more visceral. Some of them really take you places. You'll leave your body and visit space elves and weird shit, machine elves and shit. Others just, they disconnect. They turn off that part of your brain that is the source of your egoic mind. You're still there consciously experiencing your, I got news for you. Most people won't like this. More than likely, what you're witnessing is you're not leaving your body in. I'm not saying it never happens. Sometimes I think it does happen. Like some of the more extreme, like when you're just seeing like pinwheels and weird shit. I don't think that's your body or your brain anymore. I think that's all gone. But in a lot of cases where you're like seeing like your hand has swirls in it and shit. Again, I've never done it, but I go by what people are saying to me about it. I do other things. Not that I wouldn't, but I haven't. So you'll see things like swirl. Your hand doesn't secretly have swirls in it. That's something with the pattern recognition system of your mind finding patterns here and turns them into those things. But somewhere in the multiverse, that's exactly what you look like. So maybe it's true. Maybe you are going there. Again, I'm wearing more of a materialist hat right now because that's how I'm relating to you guys. My non-dualistic mind, it doesn't even worry about this stuff. I don't even think about it. Do drunk people experience that too? No more or no less than you do when you're sober. The thing that drunkenness can, well, actually, let me take that back because there is the mystery school of Dionysus back in the Greek era, just like the mystery school of Eleusis. And they used drunkenness rather than psychedelic kykeon. So they would just be a little drunk all the time. And this drunkenness can disconnect you too, but it does so much damage. Like, why would you, like alcohol, like I don't recommend that to anybody ever. Like, I don't even think it's a really good, I don't even think alcohol is a good recreational drug. It's really not. I hate drinking. I do it once in a while because it does feel nice, but I hate it. There's so much safer natural medicines you could use than alcohol that don't have these problems. You know, the almighty leaf doesn't have hardly any of the negative, especially if used in moderation. The leaf ain't gonna hurt you ever. Like I'm don't take that like a, don't cancel me, Susan Wojcicki. I'm sure some doctor could argue with me, but from my, you know, I'm not giving you advice. Me advising myself, the leaf is not, it's just not. It's of all the things that are illegal, that should be legal. Like, I mean, caffeine should be illegal before the leaf is. I'm just saying. Because caffeine fucks you up too. People like, caffeine has no negative side effects while they're sitting there, high blood pressure. Give me a fucking break. Caffeine fucks you all the way up. Like caffeine has no negative side effects whatsoever. Can you stop shaking? Are you all right? No negative side effects, my whole ass. Get the fuck out of here. My wife's laughing because she knows it's true. So yeah, those things can have an effect. They can be, listen, any of these things. But let me tell you something. In Sanskrit, you know, indica is a holy word. It's one of the 5 holy plants in the Hindu culture. It's one of the 5 holy plants. It's a holy plant. It's a medicine, is a holy medicine. Particularly indica was the one that they would use. So Wyatt says I call weed emerald tablets. Hey, maybe that's true, dude. Because, you know, people have found in their archaeological expeditions and shit, the Holy of Holies, the temple of the Jews at the time, there's evidence that they would burn, I forget if it's indica or sativa, they would burn some kush as an offering. So you're telling me that there's a whole bunch of people sitting there getting contact highs, maybe they're smoking it too, while they're sitting there praying to God. Well, what do you know? What a surprise. If you look in ancient cultures, you can't shake a stick without hitting a drug or a mushroom or something when you're talking about actual spiritual traditions. When you go back in time, there's always something. It's never, they're not a bunch of straight edge Puritans sitting around. They're all high or drunk or something. It's guaranteed. Guaranteed, without exception. Yeah, green tea has another benefit, Jay. Something about it, it counteracts the caffeine's negativity. I agree with you, although sometimes it doesn't really do it for me, but I got to get myself some good matcha. I've got some shit matcha. I got to get the real deal and try that. Yeah, Raquel, do the, you know, that's what that's next on my list, because I'm just going to get, I'm either going to get some cactuses, some ornamental cactuses, or some ornamental mushrooms that like to grow in poop. And I'm going to see if I can try that. But I don't know. I'm more likely to just reach for the damn DMT and go for broke the first try. I know everyone says don't do that, but I'm a nut, so I'll have somebody tie me down so I can't hurt myself. Although I've heard from everybody that most of these things you don't. Like that's other stuff that does that, so I don't think I'm too worried. Although I don't know if I relish the idea of maybe pissing or puking on myself, so that's a concern. Yeah, think of all those Native Americans smoking in a circle, etc. Exactly, Alpha. I mean, nicotine, if you don't do it very often, if it's a sacred act that you're doing once a month or something as a special, or once a year, yeah, I mean, think about it. For those of you who smoke cigarettes, think about the very first time you ever smoked a cigarette, what that felt like. Did it feel like that after 2 or 3 weeks of smoking? Not at all. It just felt like you were breathing in smoke, and you maybe just felt a little bit more alive when you did it. If you've never done a cigarette before, one cigarette will put you on your ass. Like when I was a kid, the first time I smoked a cigarette, I thought I was going to die. Like my vision was all weird. Like it fucked me up like a real drug would. It really did. I felt, and it wasn't just like my heart was racing. I really just felt like, woo. So we're on the drug topic more than anything now. But the point is that my recommendation, not in a way that would get me in trouble, more of a, this is what I do. If you learn to master any technique of real meditation, not guided meditation where you're prancing through flower patches in your mind, that's not meditation, that's a daydream. Okay? Most people's idea of meditation today is because of stupid new age videos. Imagine yourself floating in space with your finger up your butthole, and that butthole is warm and squishy. That's most bullshit meditation today. Real genuine meditation, if it means anything, is transcendental, and it may involve mantras, it may involve visualizations, but the whole point is to get to a place where there's nothing. The whole point is to quiet your mind, usually by giving it something bullshit to do, and then stop doing that bullshit, and for a moment there's silence in your mind. The very first time I ever achieved it was like this, what the fuck? That's cool. It scared me. When I was young, my friend had this book on hypnotism that he used. That was how I would channel spirits. He would use that book. He learned how to do hypnosis through his book, or, you know, he used the techniques anyway. And it would get me into a trance, and then I would channel spirits and all kinds of cool shit. Well, I looked at the book too, because I want to know what the hell he was doing. So I'm reading the book too, and there was this section on how to meditate. And it was a very simple thing. I was like, well, is that what Buddhists are doing? And it's, you know, it's literally the way I learned it was you mentally, you close your eyes and you imagine a blackboard, or imagine that the darkness behind your eyes is a blackboard. And you visualize yourself with a piece of chalk drawing the number 2 or something else, but 2. I remember it vividly, it was a 2. You draw a 2 and then you erase it. You draw a 2 and you erase it. And as you draw it, you say 2, erase, 2, erase, 2. And then at some point you just stop saying it and you're just visualizing it. And then you stop visualizing. You draw the 2, you erase it, and then you don't bring it back. And for a split second, there'll be nothing in your mind at all. There'll just be a blank, a total blank. You're just experiencing without any thoughts. That is the tippity tip, the most basic fundamental tippity. I can't even, it's like the first layer of skin on your fingertip. That's how deep you are into meditation. But that's that little, that's that super, once you got that, the rest actually is easy. Yeah, it's that first step that's a doozy, because it's scary, because you've been taught your whole life, probably, or you've convinced yourself that thinking is what makes you you. You can shut your brain up and still be there. And when your brain shuts up, you realize there is no brain. That's just a thought. And you keep going until there's nothing, and then nothing, and then nothing, until your body goes away. All feelings go away. Thoughts go away. Visions go away. Eventually, the only thing that's left is just consciousness, conscious of being conscious. Now what? And it has nothing to do with your body. Your body's gone. You don't feel like you're a body with consciousness. You feel like you're consciousness with a body. Consciousness imagining a body. Once you've gone all the way away and come back, sometimes that coming back is the most important part, because you can see it coming back. Usually it'll be something stupid. You know, you'll be like, nice, Christian, nice. You can see it starting to come back into consciousness. And it'll usually start in the form of something you don't want to pay attention to, like an itch. Because here's the deal. When you go into this la-la land of deep meditation, you are consciously not paying attention to this anymore, but you're still aware of it. Awareness never ceases. Consciousness is selective. Awareness is not. This is one of the arguments of Western non-dualism. So Neo-Advaita. This is one of the arguments of Neo-Advaita that I shit on. Because Neo-Advaitans generally reduce it down to a secular thing, which is fine. But in so doing, they lose some things in translation that are clearer in the Vedic or Hindu way of saying it. So you'll hear Rupert Spira, for example, refer to everything as consciousness. The problem with that is that there is a distinction between consciousness and awareness. Awareness is what's fundamental. Consciousness is an active awareness. Consciousness is awareness aware of itself. Consciousness is circular. It's an awareness of awareness. That's rudimentary consciousness. When you're aware that you are aware, you are conscious. Consciousness means to be aware of something. So to say that reality is consciousness or that the divine is consciousness, we're having a little bit of a problem here. Because reality is not consciousness. What you see as reality is consciousness, sure. So yes, I am witnessing consciousness right now. I am aware of my awareness. I am aware of all of this, and I am aware that I am aware of all this. Consciousness. Consciousness is what is awareness is what's fundamental, not consciousness. But it's easier just to say consciousness, because to say all that other shit every time is exhausting. So we just reduce it to consciousness because that's the closest thing we can get to. But you can be aware of something without being consciously aware of it. My proof to you for this: go to sleep tonight, invite me to your house, and I will wait till you're dead ass asleep, and I'll pour a bucket of water on you. You will not be conscious of me doing that, but you will be aware of it. That awareness will become consciousness, because you'll be like, oh shit, my body's wet. Get up. So consciousness will return to that state. Think of awareness like this. Everybody close your eyes. Play along with me. Close your eyes. I've done this before on a stream, but I don't know if anybody remembers it. Close your eyes. But before you close your eyes, open your eyes again and watch me for a second. So watch what I'm doing. I'm closing my eyes. I'm putting my hand out, and I'm going to just rest it comfortably. If you have to, lay it on something, but rest it like this, completely open. And rest it palm up, and rest it in a way that there's absolutely no tension in your arm or your hand at all. If you have to put it sideways, I don't care. Just put it so that your hand is completely neutral without any muscle tension, no touching between the fingers. Just let it sit. Close your eyes, and for a few minutes, just sit that way in total silence and darkness, and tune out your hand if you can. And you'll notice, like for me, it's already happening. I don't feel my hand anymore. There's no hand. There is no hand. But I guarantee you that if I will my fingers to touch each other, there's my fingers. I now have consciousness of my fingers. How can that be unless there's already awareness there? So there's awareness there all the time. There's always awareness there, but there's not always conscious awareness. So when my hand is there outstretched and open, I am aware of my hand, but it's not a hand. It's just pure awareness. And when I start rubbing my fingers together, there's a pair of fingers. I'm conscious of them now. They're gone. They're back. They're gone. They're back. That's an easy meditation you can do all the time. All right, Christian, you're trying to turn everything into porn now. We need fleshy here. He says, DH, you will not be aware of me in your room while you sleep, but you will awaken and say, oh, I'm wet. Oh, that's gotta, come on now. Wyatt says, make a video, a live stream of me going to erase for 7 hours. Put like 8 more zeros after that 4, and we'll talk. Maiden says I need Eddie on. Eddie's pretty cool, but he needs a break too. But yeah, he likes coming on. He's trying to get his whole thing going. And at some point, once I get my my more formal house thing going again, once I start building that up again, he and I have talked about it. He's probably going to be a sort of an official sidekick of that, or his own thing, like a freelance agent within that. So Eddie will be seen a lot more around Thorne Hub, as he always is. But actually, in the near future, I'm looking for, and I'll be handpicking them myself if I pick anybody, but I am looking for people sometime in the near future to join me in that endeavor. But they've got to have similar outlook. It can't be just completely different like other places do. Like some places, like they don't care what your philosophy is, and they just include. I would like to have people have a similar mindset. They can have their own expression of it, of course. I mean, a similar. If you're in the non-dual spectrum, I'm interested. Put it that way. If you're in the non-dual spectrum and you're a practicing magician and you want to offer services and things like that, and you want to be associated with me, maybe. I'm interested in meeting you, or getting to know you, but you got to have your shit together. Like there's a lot of flakes out there living in their mama's basement that really just is a waste of time. So Maiden asks, how's the book coming? Fits and starts, but it's going. Fits and starts. I have achieved a point where the outline, which is the most important part of the book, is done. It's getting tweaked a little bit here and there, but it is done. If I were to release just the outline, it would probably be enough, but I don't feel like that's enough. If I were to give somebody the outline and they're intelligent enough, they could take that outline and go very far with it. I'm confident of that. It is the quintessential state of the art of my practices in that outline. And the rest of it is just features of it, technical skills, methodologies. Those things are a dime a dozen. You can use anybody's, but that's the art part, right? The essence, the metaphysical essence, that's the sacred part. And that's the part I don't intend on charging for. It'll be in the book as a paid option, but I intend on releasing versions of that outline for free, because it's like, you can't keep non-duality to yourself, and you can't spread an idea by making it cost money. So that's going to be free for everybody. It's not even a complicated, it's something I teach you guys indirectly through my videos already all the time. So, if it really matters to you, if you're a cheap ass motherfucker, you're broke, at some point that outline, either in an abbreviated, shortcut version or the whole thing, because it's 3 chapters so far, the outline alone, that will be put out probably as a free PDF on my website at some point as well. The video format for it will probably be paid, at least after the first video. I got to make some money somehow, but the info itself will be there for free. I've always, back when I first started this, I had a sort of a motto, and that is, the truth is free. It's what you do with it that costs money. I guess that's the way I would put it now. What I was saying back then was the truth behind this, I'm never going to charge you. There's no paywall for the truth. The truth is right there. You could pay me for it if you want. If you want to donate, that's cool. But I'll never put a paywall between the truth and you. I will put a paywall between the artistry and you. I will put a paywall between the effort and you if it takes me a lot of effort. But writing 3 chapters as an outline, to me, that's a labor of love. It cost me nothing. I would do it anyway, just to have my ideas laid out in a concise way. So I would write that anyway. So it's not costing me anything to make that. And I think it's self-evident. So that part will be released in some fashion. Like I said, it may be abbreviated just because 3 whole chapters is a lot, but the principles of it will be free and they will be accessible. That's my ambition. That's my goal, because I'm not trying to just sell books. I'm trying to change people's lives. I'm trying to wake you up a little bit. I'm trying to put out ideas so that you can literally test your ideas. You can explore these things. And in a matter of fact, you can think of it like I'm lonely. There's not a lot of people that understand these things in my life. Eddie comes close. There's a few others, Atropa and some other people on here. You guys come close. Some of you guys get it. Some of you guys on my live streams definitely get the nuances pretty well. But I'm trying to wake up people, because my understanding is this: if more people understood the basic fundamentals, both of non-duality and this new thing I'm coming out with, which is really just a different slant on non-duality. It's not counter. It's not different. It's actually, everything that's in this book is really just an interpretation of things that are in non-dual teachings already. They're just more obscure. You don't see them in the mainstream very much because most people are still stuck on non-duality, period. So think of it this way. Most of you guys, if you start researching non-duality, say on YouTube, you're going to come across Rupert Spira, Bernardo Kastrup, Alan Watts, Eckhart Tolle. You're going to come across these guys and many millions of others. There's a lot of others that I love. They're just not as prominent. I'd recommend them, but I can't remember their name. There's a couple of them that are fucking phenomenal in their ability to communicate the idea. But this is the basics. When Rupert Spira is sitting there trying to tell you to point your awareness inwards and recognize awareness itself, that's barely level 1. Now, the interesting thing is that's all you need, because once you hit that level 1, the rest just extrapolates and unpacks itself for you in a lot of ways. When you truly go, oh, I am that, then you go, where the fuck does this come from? And then you got to start playing if you're still not satisfied, you keep questioning. And then eventually you come up with some bullshit explanation for it. That's what most metaphysics are. Most metaphysics are, here's reality, consciousness, now what? How the hell does this get here then? Metaphysics, blah, 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 blah. And they're not wrong. They're just not perfect. They're just word sandwiches trying to contain an ineffable thing. Like I was saying to Wyatt before, your words are just boxes, and you can't make a box big enough to fit the universe, to fit non-duality, to fit the divine. You can't make a box big enough or capable of that. So your words are just fingers pointing at something that can't be explained, ultimately. And people think that Here's another secret. People think that the reason the divine is not explainable is just because it's so weird. No, it's because it's so fundamental you can't reduce it further. When you reach a point where you can't reduce something further, you can't explain it because it's not in relationship to anything else. It is what it is. So if I say the divine is conscious, that's not an answer. Because consciousness is not a thing. It's not what it is. It's just that's as irreducible as you can get to what it is. You go one step beyond that, there's nothing. So the divine is not consciousness like Rupert Sparrow would say. Consciousness is just the closest superficial thing to it. What it is indefinable. You can't define it as consciousness because you don't even know what that is. What is consciousness? How would you define consciousness? The awareness. What do you mean the awareness? What does awareness mean? Consciousness is the awareness of things. Okay, what is the awareness of things then? It's the pictures in my head. What's the pictures in your head? It's like trying to describe the color blue. There's no way to describe it because it is it in itself. It is fundamental. You can't describe fundamentality. It just is. If everything was blueness, I could say everything is blueness and that still wouldn't tell you what it is because you can't define it. So you can't define the it that is at the fundamental level of reality. It's just there. But I can say that that fundamental reality is what we colloquially call consciousness. That consciousness, that awareness is it, but it is not awareness or consciousness. Get it? See why it's maddening? Because you can't describe it that way. Thank you, Hardcore Zombie. Actually, it's that, but it's so Hardcore Guy Zombie said, this is exactly why I have great respect for DH, because the information, the ideas, it's better to have out there because the money is a means to an end. It's partially that, but I got to level with you. There's not a lot of money in it. I'm not saying there's no money in it. If you got a good shtick, you know, if you got a good cult of personality built up around you, you know, not to knock EA or something, but somebody like EA who knows how to present themselves and market himself. He's a smart guy. He knows what he's talking about. He's very good at it. So he can make good money on it. He's a handsome guy, you know. He's a bit of a bad boy, gets all the girls excited. He sells himself, and his message is part of that self, but he's selling himself. And that's how he prospers that way. He probably has a side job. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think he does, but I wouldn't knock him if he did. I actually think people, even if you're making tons of fucking money doing this, even if I could afford all of my bills by doing just this, I'd probably still have a part-time job, partially because I have ADHD and partially to keep me a little humble. It's actually really good for you to go work a bullshit job and have people talking down to you and know in your heart that this is just something you're doing for other reasons. It's a great feeling because then you know you could quit whenever you want. So I've often said if I won the lotto, sure, I'd be lazy for a little while. Everybody would. At some point, I'd buy my own career. Probably be something like this. I'd probably, if I won like one of the big jackpots, a couple $1 million, whatever, there's actually this place in, I mean, I'd have to see it first, but you know, what I've seen in the pictures anyway, if I like the area in Sedona, there's this gorgeous $18 million estate. It's got 50 acres. The house is ridiculous. It's a big complex. I would turn that into a non-dual retreat for black magicians and shit overnight. I would blow that money in a heartbeat, assuming it was cool when I saw it. And I would just be like, okay, first 1,000 people, I'll pay for your plane ticket out here. Come on out and let's do some fucking, let's do some spiritual shit in Sedona. So. But yeah. So some people might ask, okay, Thorne, you've always been this non-dual thing. How does this align with the left-hand path? Because isn't the left-hand path, you know, this, that, and 6 other things? And quite frankly, no. There are different views of what the left-hand path means. I've run the gamut from left, right, no hand. Eddie and I had a good conversation about this the last time, and it was, you know, nobody's ever one or the other, and there's some truth to that, but everybody's one or the other at some point. But you can't be both. You can only be one at a time. But let me reframe this again. This is closer to how I see it. So let's call it left-hand path non-duality. Okay. It's a concept that combines, you know, elements of non-duality, obviously, with a philosophy that is, it means something individualistic and unconventional. It's an individualistic and unconventional approach to spirituality. It is not afraid of taboos, but it's not about taboos. The whole point of taboo, why you engage with taboos or do controversial things, it's not because that's the point. You're doing that because within that taboo or controversial thing is divinity too. And you cannot integrate the divine as the self if you reject the darkness. The darkness is as valid as the light. When I say darkness, I'm talking about those taboo, controversial things. That doesn't mean that you do them all. It doesn't mean that you literally find a list of every terrible thing you can do and then do it. It simply means that you don't shy away from it the way a person who's all love and light might do. You don't separate the light and the dark. You recognize there is no difference between the two. So our idea of what is right and wrong, good and evil, taboo or controversial or not taboo and justified, those are just perspectives through a dualistic lens. So a left-hand path non-dualist will do certain things. So here's a few things that are true about a left-hand non-dualist. They're more likely to embrace the appearance of dualities. They don't focus on just one or the other, nor do they necessarily focus on getting rid of the duality. They're more likely to accept that our experience of reality is a dualistic one. And so while we're experiencing this duality, we don't reject it. We just remind ourselves this is just an illusion. So the left-hand non-dualist is more likely to acknowledge and embrace certain inherent contradictions. That's why I said before, when you hit a paradox, you're getting close. Because a non-dualist isn't afraid of paradoxes, and a left-hand path non-dualist is really not afraid of them. We thrive on them. I love paradoxes. To me, when I hit a paradox, I know I got it. That paradox is resolvable through a non-dual lens in every single case. I mean, a metaphysical paradox of this type. So instead of seeing things as good or evil, we recognize that good and evil are shades of the same thing. We don't deny the good and the evil. We just recognize that at their core, they're the same thing, projecting as one or the other. So there's a duality there, but it's not a real duality. It's an observant duality. It's like in Zen, it seems dualistic because you got yin and yang. But it's understood, maybe not by the average Joe in America walking the streets thinking that they're into Zen, but in the real deal, especially Chan Buddhism, not just Zen, the original Chan Buddhism, yin yang was understood as one thing. Yin yang. That's why it's one word the way we say it. It's not two separate things, it's one thing. And it has a yin and a yang. A push and a pull, but it's all the same motion. Right? It's just two expressions of the same thing. So that's something that, and I'm pretty sure this is something regular non-dualists do too, but you hear it when you go study non-duality, most people are trying to evaporate that dualism through various practices. They're not embracing that dualism. They're trying to get rid of it. That's fine, but there's another way. You don't have to get rid of it. You can just transcend it. You can penetrate it. You don't have to do away with it. The idea that you have to do away with it to get it is wrong. It's not true for everybody. Another facet would be, again, about taboo. It's willingness to explore taboos. The macabre, things that other people squirm away from. Everybody's different. For some people, it's going to be like promiscuous sex all over. For others, it's going to be hanging around in graveyards like a goth. For still others, it's going to be working with demons instead of angels, like a lot of you guys and me and all that have done. So that's exploring taboos. And you're not required to explore every taboo. You're just required to challenge them in yourself until you recognize what they are. Once you recognize that, then you recognize taboos are just another kind of duality, and you can penetrate that. You can rise above it. You can transcend that duality and recognize it looks like a left and a right hand, but it's really neither. It's not a taboo, and it's not a noble thing. There's no taboo and there's no nobility. It just looks that way. You embrace that. You embrace both as the truth. So you embrace that duality as the whole. Another one would be individualism instead of like collectivism, which is such a big thing today. A lot of people are collectivists and they don't even know it. I'm a community this, I'm a part of this, I'm a this and a that. Collectivism is actually not in a normal sense what non-dualism is teaching. There is this myth that non-duality means we're like a Borg hive mind and we're each just parts of that. That's not it. Ultimately, there is only the individual self, but that individual self is cosmic. It's not personal. This is why it avoids solipsism. Non-duality is not solipsistic because it doesn't make the claim that there is a singular human mind imagining the universe. It is closer to thinking there's a universe that is dreaming of a human mind. That's a better analogy. It's still solipsistic. It's still in that direction, but it's not true solipsism at that point. And then when you go the rest of the way, you realize there's no universe either, so there's no solipsistic element at all. Non-duality is not solipsistic. It just it's misunderstood as such, but it is not that. So there is room for individuality there. You can still be a unique individual within a unique whole. You can be a unique wave in a unique ocean. You get it? Remember my analogy with the ocean and the wave before? You can be a unique ocean. You can be a unique wave. And within that unique wave is every wave. It's every ocean in that wave. And every ocean has its waves and so on. It's just microcosm and macrocosm all the way down until it's just one big microcosmic macrocosm. That's all it is. You can't separate them. It's one thing. So there is just one individual being, and that individual being manifests itself as a multitude of individual beings. And it is your right as an incarnate being to be individuated, to recognize, hey, we're all one, but I'm this part of the one, and you're that part of the one, and we're all together part of the whole. And we're all one. We're all one thing. But each of us is a unique manifestation of that one thing. So the left-hand path of non-duality doesn't deny that individuality. It simply negates its separation from other individual things. It's just one whole of individuals. Again, like the colors of a rainbow, it's all light. They just look different. There's individual colors, but those individual colors are just a superficial look of light. I'm an individual myself, but this is just an isolated look of existence. Another thing would be the tendency to transcend, to literally transgress. Fuck transcend. Let's transgress the boundaries, especially of society, philosophy, culture. This is why you'll notice I don't fit in many different paradigms of culture. As much as I outwardly express a goth aesthetic, I'm not like most goth people. I'm a non-dualist, but I'm not like most non-dualists. So that's my individuality, but part of that individuality is my willingness to transgress upon the sacred, to transgress upon what people make into taboos, to push norms, to challenge the norms, even of the cultures that I appreciate or that I prefer. For example, I may prefer MAGA right now, not to get political, but I still challenge those motherfuckers all the time. There's a lot of tradcon fools. There's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of bigotry that is there. So I transgress on them, just like I transgress on the other side. I transgress. Just call me the great transgressor. That should be my new title. D.H. Thorne, transgressor of boundaries. But not in a narcissistic way. If you know a narcissist, they don't respect your boundaries. I don't mean I'm going to transgress your boundaries. I mean societal boundaries. If society says that the communist is evil, well, then I'm going to investigate. Well, communism's not evil. I just think it's misguided. And it's not to say that it shouldn't be practiced somewhere. It just shouldn't become a centralized state. Well, that's still pretty transgressional against other libertarians like me. So though I disagree with it, I'm not going to sit there and say, down with the commie. I'm not going to join in that cult that destroys everybody. So I transgress against that thing. And the fifth thing that I would say that makes the left-hand path of non-duality unique is the emphasis placed on integration of shadows. And if you really think about it, every item from 1 through 4 is really just a kind of shadow work. If you really are philosophically centered and you really know what you're doing, you realize that embracing dualities means embracing a part of your shadow. Exploring taboos is literally shadow work. Individual empowerment is literally a form of shadow work. Transgressing of boundaries is literally a form of shadow work. So these are all dimensions of shadow work. So the integration of shadow, if I were to summarize the left-hand path in its totality, would be the left-hand path is about integrating the shadow, whereas the right-hand path is about rejecting it. The left-hand path says the shadow is divine just like the light is. So let us reveal our shadow and integrate that. So, put simply, left-hand path anything is pure shadow integration. Whereas the right-hand path tends to be a rejection of the shadow. Or a creation of the shadow. Right-hand pathers tend to create big shadows. If you ever follow a right-hand path anything, you will find that those motherfuckers usually have deep, dark-ass shadows that they are hiding from you. A good example would be like the aforementioned, well, I wouldn't say Rupert necessarily, but like Bernardo Kastrup, for example. He turned me off because this motherfucker is talking about non-duality and enlightenment and all this shit. And then in the next breath, he's talking about nuking Russia and he doesn't care if it destroys the world because he's mad that Russia invaded Ukraine. I'm like, damn, that motherfucker hasn't done a stitch of shadow work. That doesn't mean we don't all have triggers that make our shadows trigger. It's just the level of the lack of self-awareness in that moment when I saw him going off. It reminded me of myself when I've gone off. I'm like, there's a shadow right there. This motherfucker ain't done his shadow work. He is a right-hand pather. He's looking at the world like it needs to be improved, like he needs to focus on the positive. Doesn't mean you can't hit enlightenment that way. It just means that the left-hand path, in my opinion, leads to a more complete non-dual awakening. The right-hand path can lead to it too, but the left-hand path is more comprehensive because you're not ignoring anything. All right. Well, I'm losing my voice. I think it's going to have to be an earlier night. Mystic asks a good question. I'll touch on that real quick. What is demons really to a Christian? Anything is not Jesus is a demon, blah, blah, blah. All right. I don't want to go too deep into this because I do have an intention to leave very shortly because I'm losing my voice tonight early. I think it's because I have, what is this anyway? Lemon lime. Maybe it's the lime. Usually lemon lime doesn't make my voice go out, but I feel like my throat's dry even though I'm drinking this, so it's hurting my throat. That's gross. Anyway, demons are a word. Let me cut right to the chase. Especially from this non-dual perspective that I'm always talking about. Angels, demons, gods, they're just words. They're just words that human culture has wrapped around certain experiences. You need to not treat them literally or imagine them literally. There is no such thing as a demon. There's no such thing as an angel. There's no such thing as a god. There's no such thing as a human. Just wipe your slate completely clear. Sort of like being a lard ass. You go on a diet, a really strict one till you lose weight, and then you reintroduce food you're able to eat. So in the same sense, let's wipe the slate clear and let's reintroduce the essence of what a demon is. So what is the essence of a demon? Well, first of all, the word itself is bullshit. It's a misuse of the word daemon. Because like you pointed out, Christians basically labeled anything a demon that wasn't of God. But when they said demon, they didn't mean a daemon. They meant a devil. So since that's what we're really talking about, when you ask me what's a demon, you're not asking me what's a daemon. That's a Greek concept. You're asking me what a demon is, and that's in a Christian context, isn't it? So wipe that slate clear again. Let's reintroduce it this time from that perspective. What's a demon then? Well, to the Christian, the demon is basically a shadow. It's what I would call a shadow. So Christian demons are Christian shadows. They are the kinds of shadows that Christians cast in themselves, both as a collective and as individuals. So they project the concept of their shadow, they externalize it, and they imagine it has a form in the form of these scary, fallen, bestial chimeras. And if you look, the way Christians portray demons, it's like an angel, but an angel is this, well, earlier in Christianity, they weren't humanoid, but they were these, almost Lovecraftian things, but beautiful. So you're talking about things with wings and eyes and flaming and all kinds of cool shit. They're just like, wheel in the sky keeps on turning. Like they're really wild, far out shit. Beautiful, stunning. Well, a demon is the same thing, but it's the fallen version of that. It's a bestial conglomeration of hideous creatures stuck together. And each one of those creatures is a symbol of something. When you open the Goetia and you look that demons have, this demon has like the head of this and the this of the that, and those are all meant to symbolize something. Now, the hard thing for us today is those symbols mean something different to us. To the Christian mind back then, what did they mean when it had the body of a lion and the head of a ram? And or the head of a lion and the body of a man and a snake in its hand. Or what were they saying? Well, we have to almost go back to Egypt. We see the same thing, don't we? So Christians were like demonizing, they were literally turning deities and ideas of prior cultures, using them as the poster children for their shadow. So when you have a Christian who's afraid of their greed, they're afraid to be greedy because they know that greed is one of the 7 deadly sins. They imagine a monster that represents greed, and that becomes Mammon, or choose your greed demon from whatever list you want. So there's really no such thing as a demon. Demons are a Christian convention for their shadow. When I say mind the shadows, if it was 500 years ago, I'd be saying mind the demons. Because fundamentally, there's no difference except for in outward appearance. There's no difference. They basically do the same thing. When someone is saying, you know, I'm battling my demons, that means they're battling their shadow instead of integrating it. They think they're doing a noble thing because they're of a Christian mindset. The Christian mindset is right-hand path, generally. There's a few exceptions in certain very rare sects that you don't know about. They do exist, but they're like, 20 people in the whole thing. You know what I mean? They're more like Gnostic Christians. Gnostic Christians are more inclined to integrate their demons, in my opinion. So if this was 500 years ago, I'd be saying, mind the demons, integrate your demons, embrace your demons, don't fight them. But you don't embrace them to let them take over, or you don't embrace your shadow so that your shadow takes control. Your shadow is more in control when you don't know it's there. In other words, your deepest, darkest shadow only has real power over you when you're not aware of it. As soon as you become aware that you've got one, and you got one, trust me, as soon as you become aware of it, that mindfulness alone immediately begins to disassemble that shadow's entire control mechanism over you. You begin to realize, oh, wait a minute. That's why I do that? Okay. Oh, that triggers me? Okay. And this allows you to navigate so that this demon shadow doesn't control you anymore. It's another way of doing like immersion therapy. If you're afraid of spiders, it'd be like laying down and letting a million spiders crawl all over you to the point where you just don't care anymore. Right? It's a little bit like immersion therapy. It's saying, well, I've got this shadowy proclivity. I'm manipulative, or I let politics piss me off, and the colossal shadow takes over. So I am mindful of that. Once I become mindful of that, then it is more difficult for that shadow to just manipulate me like it's a separate thing. I begin to realize, all right, politics trigger me. Well, what's your reaction to that? If your reaction to that knowledge is, well, then I better avoid politics, your shadow just controlled you. Because your shadow is now saying, don't look at this. In other words, your shadow is, you're not actually stopping the triggering. All you're doing is just saying, the shadow rules me, so I better avoid the thing that gives it an outlet. That's not the answer. Well, then you're going to think, well, wait a minute, is that a shadow? Is that my shadow of pride? Saying that I am admitting defeat and I don't want to do that, so I better look at politics? No. If it's not the shadow of pride, then what must it be? What it is you say, okay, if I run from this, then the shadow wins. But if I dive into it, the shadow wins too. So how do I? This is the paradox. Remember what I said, as you find paradoxes, you're getting closer to the truth. The truth is, you get triggered as a choice. You have a choice to be triggered about what you're reading. or seeing in politics. It's upsetting, but you don't have to be triggered by it. The triggering is your action, your response, your ego. Now, someone might say, well, you don't always have a control. In that case, we're talking about a trauma. So this is an involuntary thing. But that's still a kind of shadow. So how do we deal with that? Let's say it's not a trigger like a voluntary trigger. Let's say it's like maybe something really bad happened. Maybe, trigger warning. I'm going to use the R word that sounds like grape. So let's say you were graped. And from that moment forward, anything that reminds you of that's going to trigger. Well, that as a shadow, look, I wouldn't know how to begin. I wouldn't know how to begin with that. I'm just being honest. It's never happened to me. I wouldn't even know how to start. Because to me, that's like, what am I going to tell you to do? Go watch, grape porn or something? Like, how do you integrate that fucker? Probably by healing. Probably by going through therapy and realizing that that's not how it is for everybody and blah, 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 blah. Until eventually you get to the point where it's like, that was just a thing that happened. It's not me. At that point, that grape shadow has been integrated. But like I said, that's not, I wouldn't have a way to, like, I couldn't help you. If you came to me like, Thorne, my shadow is I got graped and now I'm fucked. I'd be like, I'm not saying I wouldn't try, but I'm just saying I'd have to meditate on that a while. Like, I couldn't just come up with, normally I could come up with something right off the top of my head. I couldn't come up with something for that. But the point is, that's still a shadow. And you have to learn to integrate that shadow. Otherwise, that incident forever controls you. Raquel says, and very true, that never happened to me either, but it has happened to people I love, and specialists, let's emphasize that word, and specialists have to help with that. That's a special case. There's a few others, like the P word, the P word that ends in Edo, shit like that. There's certain things that are just, they're beyond, you need a specialist to help you. Mystics asking how to find a shadow. Don't wait for it to appear. Actively look for them. Take your light of awareness. This is why I wrote Shadownomicon. And I personalized them. I personified the shadows, giving you guys something to latch onto as a figment so you can externalize it. You can conjure them. You can make them manifest. You can even potentially see them. You can bring them out. And I made a list of them. And, it's just a coincidence that they are vaguely, they're not the same as the 7 deadly sins. But if you look, there's a correlation between them for a reason. They weren't wrong with that. The 7 deadly sins are the 7 deadly shadows. And there's countless other shadows, but those are the big ones. From those, all others descend. So if you take the light of awareness and you actively seek each of those main shadows and all of their little projections of themselves, if you find each one of those shadows individually and really come to know them, there's not a lot of shadows left that are going to be waiting to be found that aren't part of those or under them, or an expression of them. So you take those 7 deadly sins, those 7 shadows, and Legion as the big one, in which all of them are. And Legion is like the shadow of the non-dual divine, because we usually think of the non-dual divine as this blinding light. Well, there's a blinding shadow too. And you bring them together, Legion and the divine are one. Legion is just the back ass side of the divine. So when you integrate all of them, there's still more, but that's your roadmap. So if you feel like I don't have many shadows, well, you're full of shit. You got tons of them, especially if you think you don't. In fact, if you think you don't have a shadow, your shadow's way bigger than anybody else's. And shadows have nothing to do with whether life matters to you or not. In fact, the whole idea of life not mattering is probably a shadow. A shadow's doing that. If you have a very nihilistic attitude about life, like fuck this shit, I don't like it, or it doesn't matter, it's temporary, that too is a shadow. The divine didn't come here to just be like meh. The divine manifested here because it adores this fucking experience. You wouldn't be here if you didn't adore it. Your persona may say, I don't like it. It may find it painful, but the divine is loving it. The divine doesn't think life doesn't matter. The divine is here to experience this illusion we call life. And it is a shadow to be like, because really, a lot of the times our superficial reaction is opposite to the reality. So for example, if politics trigger me into anger, it's not actually anger. That's just an outward manifestation. It's probably because of something like fear. It's probably because of something like insecurity. It might not even have anything to do with politics. It might just be because I'm arguing with people online that are pissing me off, insulting me and getting through to me and actually damaging my ego. So the more I admit and am aware of that, the less triggered I become, because I'm integrating all of those little lesser shadows that manifest as that big one. So if someone, and I'm not insulting you, by the way, Mystic, when I'm saying like, don't, like this whole matter that life doesn't matter. I know my tone is rather belittling, but there's a point to that tone. There's a reason I adopt it. It's not to insult you. It's more like to light a fire there, to challenge you. Do you really think it doesn't matter? Or is that just some edgy shit you're saying? Is there a reason for it? What's the reason for it? Examine it. Look it up. I'm not analyzing you, so don't respond to me. Go in your own private place and really analyze why you said that. Assuming I'm interpreting you right, which maybe I'm not. It's just a little line of text. I could completely have you wrong. Let's say I have it right and you're sounding nihilistic. Take that nihilism and really challenge the fuck out of it. Really explore it. When I say challenge it, it doesn't mean that you say it's not there. I'm saying challenge it to explain itself, to prove it. Why are you nihilistic? What's the reason? Okay, is that reason valid? Are you sure? Really shine a light on that shadow. The fact that it even makes you ask the question, how do you find your shadow when life doesn't matter, tells me your shadow is very much in control. It's almost like your shadow saying, don't look for me. Oh, you'll never find me because life doesn't matter. You're so cool, or you're so nihilistic, or whatever your reason. Maybe you're bad off. Maybe you're miserable. Maybe you're suicidal. Maybe that's what you mean, It's going to hide behind that. It's going to hide behind whatever the reasoning is for that. It's going to say, you're not going to find me because you don't care about life. And shadows are a part of life. They're not part of what you... Bullshit. Absolute bullshit right there. Grade A, pure cow flop. And that's what shadow work is. Shadow work is challenging these things, not refusing them, not hiding from them, not running away, not destroying them. The whole point is not to destroy your shadow. It's to, that's literally what I'm about. And if you're not okay with it, so for example, when I'm talking about the political shit show and how it triggers me, I don't like that it triggers me. So that means that shadow isn't just a shadow. It's toxic. And that makes the ego thicker and more firm and real and hard and set. Come on. I'm saying this for CM. because I know he likes twisting what I say as a joke. Your ego gets harder and stiffer and throbs much stronger when it is being attacked, when it's being traumatized, when it's being triggered. So ultimately, if I'm being honest, my political triggering might actually be primarily a manifestation of Ronzael. But it's not unique to just that shadow. It's got other shadows playing games with it too. So see where I'm going with this? It's not a simple process. It's an ongoing process. It's not a silver bullet. It's a path. One path just walks towards the light and ignores the shadows and says, they're not real. I'm going to ignore them. They don't matter. And yes, you can transcend that way. The other path says, I'll take the low road, the dark road. I'm going to watch for my own shadows because I know that that's me too. They are both difficult journeys. The difficulty of the right-hand path is maintaining this pristine love and light attitude. You can't do it. It's an undoable thing. It's a double bind. You can't simultaneously be perfect and here. Perfection's a myth. It's an illusion. At least the way we think of it. The difficulty of the left-hand path is more obvious because you go, well, that's dangerous. You're literally letting the dark side have a little bit of room. You know, that left-hand path is just as challenging, just in a different way. In my opinion, the left-hand path might actually be the easier route. It's just more dangerous. No, actually, Jojo, CM is actually here. They just go by a different name. They know who I'm talking about. CJ is somebody different. So I was actually talking to CM accurately. CM is Christian, by the way. I do love me some CJ though, and I'm glad to see CJ here, but I was actually talking to CM at that moment. Names are labels, exactly, Hardcore Zombie. You're all me. I'm not gonna refer to you guys by your names anymore. I'm just gonna say me over there and me over there. The me with Raquel Kelly as their name. Oh, Mystic, I'm sorry to hear that. I can't imagine it. Man, I would pick your brain about what it's like to work in government right now. Oof. Oof. Depending upon what part of government. I mean, as a libertarian, all that shit's garbage, but you know how much it sucks to be a libertarian and have to apologetically support MAGA and Trump because that's the only reasonably sane option on the table? You have any idea how miserable that is for me when most of my social perspectives lean more towards the other side? Not woke by any stretch at all. Wokeness is a cancer. But the libertarian perspective from which it originates. So wokeness is like a corruption of libertarianism. It's a subversive form of libertarianism. It takes the ideas of libertarianism to such an extreme that it becomes a toxic expression. It's no longer about freedom. It's about forcing people to accept. It's like, ugh. It's no different than Protestant, Bible thumping pearl clutchers, except they're just offended about something different. It's the same exact people. Like one thing Jen and I have been talking about a lot lately is wokeness, and how we're both very much, we're not eye to eye, but we're very aligned. We're very much in alignment on most social issues. She takes them a little differently. We have differences, but they're not existential. They're just, you know, I think that some of this stuff is silly and she does too. But so, I don't want to speak for her because she's not talking right now, but we both agree that wokeness and Bible thumping Christians are the same animal. They're just two ends of the same animal. One's the ass and one's a puking mouth. They both suck, right? They're both a jackass. I don't like them. So there's really no difference. But the fundamental idea of treating other people with equal rights and shit, that's, you know, and giving them their dignity as humans, that's basic. That's right, Tommy. In fact, most people, Tommy brings up, you know, some libertarian comments, libertarianish ideas, or from people that weren't necessarily technically classified as such. And there's a lot of truth to that. I would say that everybody's a closet libertarian. They just don't know it. I think everybody, if, you know, if you really confronted their indoctrinated dogmas, at their heart, most people are, without realizing it, a kind of libertarian. Everybody values freedom. Nobody wants to be told what to do. Well, that's a libertarian mentality. The difference is some people know it and they strive for freedom. Other people don't know it and they strive for comfort or safety or some other bullshit. Yeah, I don't understand that. Who in the fuck, how can you possibly construe libertarianism as bad? I mean, I understand that they do, and they have arguments for it, but how in the name of fuck can you possibly construe libertarianism as bad? Especially if you are separating it from the left and right spectrum. You're just going pure libertarian, which is a social thing. How can libertarianism be bad? Pure libertarianism is what? So you're telling me that slavery and authoritarianism is good? That doesn't mean libertarianism can't become toxic. Anything to an extreme can become toxic. It's just that libertarianism as a fundamental philosophy is literally, well, it's secular Luciferianism. Let me be honest. People don't realize, I don't know if that's where it originated, but what we call Luciferianism, especially Gnostic Luciferianism is just spiritual libertarianism. If you consider yourself a Luciferian and you don't have a libertarian mindset, you're not, in my opinion, a true Luciferian. You're just somebody wearing Luciferian as a robe. You're a poser. You know, when I meet a Luciferian, it's like, we need to ban guns. All I want to do is just crack their head open. Yes. You're not a Luciferian. Take my fucking, stop wearing my philosophy as your garment. You fucking liar. We need to ban guns and freedom of speech is problematic. We shouldn't be able to say certain words. And I am so into Lucifer. No, you're an idiot. You're not into shit. You're a fucking fool. The fundamental premise of Luciferianism and libertarianism is the same. Freedom, liberation, self-actualization, self-liberation. Now, libertarianism, the philosophy, has that non-aggression principle in it, but the Luciferian kind of does too, because the Luciferian recognizes that all are, especially that Gnostic form or that non-dual Luciferian, recognizes that all is the same divine being who is ignorant of the divinity. They're trapped, not really, but trapped in quotes, in their mortality. So Luciferian generally has a very similar libertarian mindset. They may not know it. Like, I've known a lot of people who were Luciferian and didn't know they were libertarian. And I've known a lot of libertarians that didn't know they were Luciferians. You know what I'm getting at? Like, I know quite a few like that. But yeah, Mystic, if you're working in government, oof. Oof, oof, oof. Depending upon in what capacity. All right, guys. So like I said, my voice is gone and it's 12:30 here. So I think I'm going to call it. I pretty much covered all the things I wanted to talk about. So I am going to, where's my screen? Let me pop this up so I can set it all up to say goodnight. So thank you again to Raquel Kelly for that beautiful $20 donation. I appreciate all you guys, especially my regulars, but the new people, welcome again. I want to welcome all you guys. If you're here for the first time tonight and you haven't chatted, feel free to say hi real quick before we log off. Show me that you exist. If this is your first time tonight, I'll give you a couple minutes just to say hi. Just introduce me like, hi, Thorne. That's all you got to do. I'll give you like 1 minute. This way I know you exist. I know a lot of people watch this and never comment, and they just kind of listen. I guess I put them to sleep. I've had people tell me that they like to fall asleep to me. I don't know why. I can't imagine falling asleep to me. I'd go crazy. I feel like I have an annoying voice. I know. I've noticed that I guess I have a decent singing voice. I've been told that, well, I kind of shout on my streams. If I just talk in my normal voice, a lot of people like it. You know, some people would say it's kind of, well, not right now, but you get the point. My voice is not bad when I talk, but apparently a lot of people like my voice. I don't know why. I think I'm whiny. I used to be nasally until I lost weight. People are saying goodnight now. So, all right, guys, if you haven't said your hello, Thorne, it's my first time or whatever, you probably got about 30 seconds to do so. Plus there's a delay. Mystic stalked I think they meant to say stalked. He says I stalked, or she or they, I stalked your YouTube for 3 months before chat. That's cool. I guess a lot of people are shy like that. Like, you know, you don't have to be shy. I don't bite, but I do put my teeth around you. You know what I mean? Jockster. I should hug Jockster if I ever meet you. That was a great comeback. Jockster said, people like the whiny voice, don't worry. Ooh, that's a good one. All right, now I'm like, wait a minute. I don't really have a whiny voice, do I? Oh, I guess I do. I know I can have a whiny. I definitely do have a whiny voice. I can have a deep and really sultry voice, but most of the time I do tend towards like a little bit of a, especially if you ever get me mad. No, if I'm really mad, my voice gets deeper and harder. But if I'm arguing with you and I'm feeling defensive, or if you're a girl, this is something that's all right. I said I was going to hang up, but this will be my last thing. If you're a female, my voice goes up. I don't know what it is. If I'm talking to, you know, suddenly I have a high pitched voice. I can never figure that out. But oh yeah, the dolphin voice, the dolphin kid voice. Yeah. The Christian brought up the dolphin. Oh God. I haven't done that kid in like a while. See if I can do it. First I have to remember what he would say. Yes, I love the blowhole. The blowhole is the best part of the dolphin because it spews out all the hot air. And then that makes the clouds in the sky. All right, guys, that's it. I'm leaving. Good night. I appreciate you all. Love you all. Good night and thank you. I'll see you next week, hopefully. Peace.